Richard Sykes, Senior Independent Director on the Middlesex Board. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We're here today at Lord's in the Pavilion. Yesterday we advertised for the replacement role for Mike O'Farrell, obviously as chair of the club. Mike's signalled his intent to step down in spring, so the search starts here. You've come in to chat to us about that process. Let's kick off with the SGM when we first obviously raised this with the members that we would be looking to appoint a chairman. Where does it go from here, Richard?
Well, I think we agreed at the SGM that there was a significant interest in understanding of how we were going to go about the process of appointing a new chair, and therefore it seemed sensible to use this morning as the opportunity to explain that to the members about how we're set off on that process. I'm the Senior Independent Director, and as a result have taken the lead in determining how we're going to go through that process, but it's a process that we're looking to engage with as many people as possible with over the next couple of months. Significantly, Middlesex has gone through a huge amount of change since Mike first became chair. Mike took over for me and Love It a long time ago. That sounds terrible, but he's done a lot for the club over that period of time, and he's going to be a very hard act to follow as chair. But the cricket landscape is changing significantly and very quickly, and therefore there's a huge opportunity for new candidates to think through how becoming chair of Middlesex might play out and how they would like to take the role forwards. So we see this as an opportunity to reflect on what's right for Middlesex going forwards, building on the successes that Mike and previously Ian have had with the club. Richard,
I think it was about 3 years or so ago now that we made some fairly significant changes to the way the club was governed. We restructured the board, and at that point, it was around that time you joined the board along with some others. This, I guess, is just another tick in that box about sports governance is changing. The sport becomes more complex. It's important that we move with that and get the right appointees on the board to move forward as a club.
Indeed, I think we've done quite a lot in terms of trying to modernise the governance of the club over that period, and the first step was the change of the rules, enabling us then to appoint some independent board members alongside the member-elected board members, and also having a couple of seats on the board for the recreational game. So that started to change the balance of the game to make sure we had the right skills and inputs around the table. We changed some of the rules in terms of office, in terms of engaging with members, etc., to make sure that they were, as I say, fit for purpose going forwards. One of the implications of those changes of rules was that Mike's term would be naturally coming to an end now, so we put into the rules how we would go about seeking a new chair, which is what we're doing now, but that's clearly being led by the board, and as I'll come on to in a minute, we want member engagement in that as well. But yes, this is an ongoing process, if you like, of making sure we've got the right skill sets around that table, focusing on diversity, equality, and the skills that we need to run Middlesex in today's quite challenging environment.
You obviously mentioned Mike there, Richard. Big boots to fill for any incoming chair. Mike's obviously done a huge amount of work with the ECB over the last few years, is a hugely popular face around the club. What are you looking for in the ideal candidate to come in and replace Mike?
I don't think we're going to find another Mike, so let's start with that, because Mike's unique and the commitment he's given to the club has been tremendous. But I think the role has probably got two core parts to it. One being cricket, obviously, and understanding cricket, and by that I mean understanding obviously the men's professional game, Sunrisers, but also understanding the recreational game and how we Middlesex engage with the clubs, how we also engage with MCC as one of our key stakeholders, how we engage with the ECB, and how we engage with the other championship clubs and their chairs. So I think the one part of the role is an appreciation and enthusiasm and an understanding of the strategic direction that cricket is moving in order to best represent Middlesex in that environment, regardless of which environment we're in. That links in with also engaging with the members as another important part of that core cricketing role. The second part of the role is, if you like, the governance aspects of it. And that's where it's about finding someone who's got the experience as a chair. Chairing the board is an important role, engaging with the fellow board members, getting the best out of them, ensuring that the committees that we use are fit for purpose, is all part of the chair's leadership. So that's an important part of the role. Working closely with Andrew Cornish, the CEO, and the executive team is the second important part of it, because ultimately Andrew reports into the chair. So making sure we've got the right executive team under Andrew's leadership is a second important part of it. I think then there's the governance engagement with our stakeholders. So I mentioned MCC. Clearly our partnership arrangement with MCC is critical to us as Middlesex. So the chair needs to make sure that they've got the right relationship there. Equally with the ECB, from a strategic direction, there's a new chair at the ECB now in Richard Thompson, new chief exec coming in shortly in Richard Gould. So we need to make sure that we, Middlesex, have got the right relationships with the ECB and that our voice is heard at the ECB to protect and promote our own interests. So that's the second core part of it. So those two core parts, cricket and governance, are key at any point in time. But at the moment, cricket is going through huge transition, change in everything we look at. Obviously, the high performance review is at the heart of that. So the third key role, I think, for the chair, certainly for the first couple of years of their appointment, is making sure that we, Middlesex, fully appreciate the intent and the repercussions of the changes that might be coming through. And again, that we understand what they are, that we engage in that discussion, and that we share those discussions with all our stakeholders, but including the members. That doesn't necessarily mean the chair has to do everything. It's a board responsibility and an executive responsibility. But the ability of the chair to provide that leadership is critical in this role.
I suppose that, leading on from that, Richard, that also takes us into the time commitments that will be required for any chair incoming. I know we've put a guideline in the description of the role that went out there, but you never quite know what's around the corner. I spoke to Mike before speaking to yourself, and Mike said one of the biggest challenges he faced was that you can pretty much know what you're doing next week, and then something will jump up and bite you, and that might monopolise time. I guess you've hit the nail on the head there. It's working with the CEO, Andrew Cornish, and the executive under Andrew to manage that time load to make sure you're not swamped.
Mike and I have spoken about this, and it was probably the hardest paragraph in the advert to write in terms of saying what is a fair assumption of what time is required, and we ended up saying potentially 1 to 2 days a week. But I think it is very variable, and it will vary depending on the type of individual who puts their name forward. So I think it's something that, depending on style, different people will take the role forwards in their own manner. Some people may absolutely wish to spend the 1 to 2 days a week governing and understanding cricket, as well as potentially going to watch a significant number of Middlesex matches here at Lord's and away, engaging with members there. Others may say, no, the focus is much more on the bigger picture governance and oversight, and I'm going to make sure that I've got the right team around me, both, as you say, with the executives, but also through the non-execs, because there's a board there of different skills, all of whom can do things. So my encouragement to anyone watching this today who's thinking about whether or not to put their name forwards is don't be put off by that time commitment. Talk to us about it. Talk to us about how they see that, how they might be able to take the role forwards, and we can compare and contrast different things. And it might be that we end up saying that actually someone can do this role in a significantly different way to the way Mike's done it. It's not necessarily a better or worse way, it's just a different way. So my encouragement to anyone is recognise that it's an important role, that yes, as Mike says, you never know what might be coming up around the corner, but at the same time there's different ways of managing that. I suspect there is a core base of 1 day a week, realistically, but the upside, how much time on top of that, is very difficult to assess.
Absolutely. One thing that's coming through loud and clear, Richard, is the need to have a sound understanding of the game of cricket. I guess if anybody is coming in with a sound understanding of Middlesex, you talked about the nuances with our partnership with MCC, that's going to be a bonus, but having that core understanding of the challenges that the game faces and where the game is heading, especially with the ECB's high performance review that's currently ongoing, I guess that's a critical part of any application.
Indeed, and I also think it's an understanding of sports governance more generally. You know, I'm on the England Hockey Board as the Senior Independent Director there, and I find it useful to be able to compare and contrast between hockey and cricket. So I think people, if they've got that sports governance appreciation, that's a really helpful base to work off. Clearly, understanding cricket builds on that, which is really helpful. And then Middlesex itself built the appreciation of everything that Middlesex stands for, in particular our values, etc., is absolutely important as well. So it's a combination of skills that come through that. But I wouldn't put anyone off if they're not spending 1 day a week watching Middlesex play. That doesn't mean you can't become chair. It's making sure that you appreciate the opportunity the role gives, the excitement that the role brings, because it is an exciting role, and the opportunity to take Middlesex forwards.
Let's talk a little bit about the process, Richard. Obviously, the role has now been advertised as such. Where do we go from here? Obviously, you'll have an interview process, which I'm assuming you'll be part of that panel on. Perhaps you can explain to us the timings and the process that the club will now go through to reach a successful appointment.
Indeed. The advert itself says that applications need to be in by the 21st of November, so effectively a 3-week period. I think we're 1 day short of that, three weeks, but basically a 3-week period for people to get their applications in. Depending on how many applications come in, and we haven't a clue as to whether we're going to get 2, 20 or 100 applicants, we just don't know. We will then sort of do a long listing review of those applicants with a view to doing first interviews in the first week of December, hopefully. And I would expect that we would probably limit those interviews to a maximum of 10 or 12 people, but until we see the applicants, it's difficult to know. We would then expect to shortlist from that long list down to 3 or 4 strong candidates with a view to interviewing them at the very beginning of January, and then aim to have a decision to take to the Middlesex board at our board meeting at the very end of January for a recommendation that ultimately will go to the members for ratification at the AGM in April or May. So that's the process. Building on that, one of the key messages that came out at the SGM was the desire to make sure members away from the board had an opportunity to participate, and the membership committee under Marilyn Smith have identified, I think, a couple of members who are willing to be part of one or other of the interview panels. So there will be a member away from the board, independent of the board, as part of each of those 2 panels. And in addition, as we mentioned at the SGM, we were also looking to find someone independent of Middlesex, and I think we found the right person to join us for the second interview, who will provide an additional area of challenge and independence. So that would go on to they would be part of the second interview process. The other thing is that we're keen to make sure that any interested candidate has the opportunity to talk to people about what the role might mean and what Middlesex cricket might mean. And our core cricketers, if you like, Gat, Rad, Mike Selvey, Gus, are all willing to talk to people to provide some time to explain what Middlesex really stands for and everything. And then clearly, if people have got questions around the wider governance side of things, then myself or others are happy to take that. It's important that people are given the opportunity to understand the role as best as possible as part of the application process, because that way people will go into it with their eyes open and hopefully recognise that the opportunity is an exciting one.
Absolutely. Richard, you mentioned earlier Mike's stepping down obviously in the springtime, and he is, I think you're probably right in saying he's irreplaceable. If you had your way, how would you describe the ideal candidate? Where would you see them coming from? Would it be sport? Would it be business? Would it be recreational sport? Who is your ideal candidate?
Before I answer that, can I just sort of add one thing to my previous comment? Because the other lens that we've put on the interview panels is gender and ethnic diversity.
Yes.
And we as a board are getting better at having a diverse ethnic board. We've still got a way to go on some of the gender diversity, and that's one of the ongoing challenges. But we're determined to make sure that through the interview process that we've got a genuine diverse board for that purpose. In terms of your question about Mike and the type of ideal candidate, I don't think there is an ideal candidate. If you look around the 18 counties of the chairs at the moment, there's a huge variety of different backgrounds and skill sets. But I do think that appreciating the significance of the role of chairing Middlesex cricket is a key part of it. So I do think someone who's got experience of being a chair elsewhere, either as a chair of an organisation or chairing committees, and having that experience and understanding to build on as a chair is a really important part of it. And then I think secondly, there's something around the passion for cricket and Middlesex, which is also really important. And if we got a candidate who was passionate about cricket and making sure Middlesex is successful, and also has the wider governance experience to be able to genuinely make sure that we continue our modernisation process of the board and how we work together, then that's probably what I'd be looking for.
Fantastic. Well, look, Richard, I think I've covered all I needed to cover. Hopefully you have. Sounds like it's a very interesting and exciting process ahead as we look to replace the irreplaceable. Richard, thanks for being so open and candid, and fingers crossed we get a good quality of candidate coming through, and we look forward to hearing more on this matter.
Thank you, and if anyone watching this is thinking about applying, then please do so. The more people who come forward, the better.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.